Good afternoon, Greater Lake Houston area. We are continuing down our path of our salute to our veterans and taking some time to showcase veteran-owned businesses, veteran-ran organizations, organizations that benefit U.S. veterans. Today I am proud to have a good dear friend of mine, family friend. His family and mine are very close. Mr. Bruce Whitmire with Helping Heroes Outdoors. First off, Bruce, thank you. Not a hollow thank you, but thank you for your service. I was talking to a chamber friend that was a veterans chamber yesterday, and he said, hey, when you tell somebody thank you, make sure they understand you mean it. And with me, it means I understand that veterans had a different career path than I did. I chose to go through school. Those kind of things. I hear people in the corporate world talk about sacrifice. Sacrifice to them may mean not being able to carry your fluffy pillow with you to Hilton, right? Mm-hmm. Sacrifice to the corporate world might be a little different. Sacrifice to a veteran is you're not going to see your families for months on end. When you come back, you have a risk of not coming back physically in the same place you left, or psychologically in the same place you left, and all those things. So whenever you made your sacrifice and chose to serve our country in the way you did, I want you and your family, because it's extended beyond you and the sacrifices that Wendy and your kids went through, to make sure that everyone in your family, I thank you, and I hope you understand it's not a hollow thank you, and it's a true thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and John, that means a lot.
Okay. Well, Bruce, let's go through a little bit about you. You have an organization, obviously, that touched me. Me and you have a history in what you've done, and I think it's something that me and Bob are so proud to support and spend as much time as we can showcasing. The reasons, and I'll let you explain those because you do a better job articulating that. But I wanted to first get people to understand your history, your career path, the places you've been, the things you saw. It truly is a neat story. So quickly kind of go through your person, your being, and okay, what you brought you to the point you're at. And then from then, we'll take on the next phase of what you're accomplishing.
So one of the things that I knew from a very early age is that I was going to serve in the military. My dad was a World War II vet, and my dad was very proud of his service. He had served in the Army and the Navy in World War II. My dad was wounded in service, and my dad did not talk about his military service, even though he was very proud of it. All of his brothers and his uncles and his cousins had all served in the military, and one day when I was a very small boy, my dad said, son, I want you to understand, we have served this country since the Revolutionary War. We have been here on this property, and property he meant the United States, since 1690. In fact, there is a little town in South Carolina called Whitmire, South Carolina. It's called the Pearl of the Piedmont, and it's a beautiful, quaint little place. Mm-hmm. And it was there that my ancestors came and settled originally, in that little area. It's now Newberry, South Carolina, in the town of Whitmire. So we have this long thread. And then add to that thread, my family began marrying in with the Native Americans, with the Cherokee tribe. So I have an enormous amount of Native American blood in me as well. And so when you say America to me, you're talking about everything that makes up who I am. Not just a place that I reside, but it's, I guess you'd say, its air fills my lungs and its blood runs through my veins. So that's what it means to me, and that was what my dad passed down to me. And I thought, well, if this military service heritage is so great, then yeah, I'm going to do that. And in fact, when I met my wife in high school, basically the proposal was, I'm going in the military, are you going with me or not? And here we are 42 years later, and she's still there. And that path, John, has been a long and winding road. But every step of that road has been a step of service to someone greater than ourselves, or to something greater than ourselves, or to a cause. And so we went in, and I volunteered for worldwide duty. I told Uncle Sam, I said, there's nowhere in this world I won't go to serve America. Now, I'm from 90 miles north of here, in a little small town, and I live 5 miles outside of the town of 363 people. So I grew up country. And told Uncle Sam, look, I'll go anywhere. I don't care. I wound up in Austin, Texas. And I'm like, wow, that's the best you can do. Here I am. I'm willing to write the blank check and go anywhere, and you send me to Austin. But Austin was a growing experience. And from there, I went to Germany, to Ramstein. And for some reason, known only to God, my bosses saw in me the potential for leadership, and I got promoted very rapidly. Wound up leading groups of people very early in my career. As I used to say, I have a chest full of medals and a wall to pin them on. And so in that part of my career, I learned the valuable skills of leadership, mentorship, being willing to be the guy that was always the one to get your hands dirty. You take the hard road to give someone else an easier path. From there, I went to Seymour Johnson, North Carolina. And there was a totally different experience than I'd had, because I became the crew chief of a single jet. And so now, instead of working transit maintenance at Ramstein, where we took care of hundreds of jets, now I only had one. And I was assigned a young man. Now I've got one guy that works under me. I'm used to having 15. Now I've got one. And I'm like, this is really odd. But in having one, I learned the importance of quality mentorship. And the young man's name is Michael Reel. And Michael and I, we reconnected after 30 years, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. But I used to tell Michael every day, son, you do this until you retire, because you're too dumb to do anything else. And Michael, he would say, why do you tell me that every day? I said, because if I don't, you'll forget, and then you'll get out, and you'll be one of these guys on the street that somebody's got to help. And I don't want that for you. I want better than that for you. And so we went to a event, I'll call it, military event at Nellis called Red Flag. And that's simulated war games is what it is. And unbeknownst to me, somebody took a picture of my jet, and it's got my name on the cockpit, and it's got Michael Reel's name on the back cockpit. And so some 35 years after the picture was taken, it surfaced on Facebook. Again, I didn't know it had even been taken. And I reached out to the guy that had put it up, and I said, hey, that was my jet. He said, well, I took the picture. I said, do you mind if I download it? He said, no, go right ahead. He said, man, it is really cool to connect after all these years with the guy who was taking care of that plane. And so I put it up on Facebook, and I hashtagged the tail number of the airplane, and I get this reply, says, hey, I thought that picture had both canopies in it, and I only see the one with your name, and my name was on the back. And it was Michael.
There you go.
And so we swapped phone numbers, and I called him, and he is retired, living in North Carolina, owns his own electrical business. He says, I got to say thank you. And I said, why? He said, because every time it came time for me to re-enlist, and I was thinking about not doing it, I heard your voice saying, you are too dumb to do anything else. He said, and because of that, I stayed in.
There you go.
I made E8, and I retired.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting path, and to reconnect after all these years with Michael was something that was very special.
Yeah, that tells quite a bit about a good story, and I hope his it sounds like Michael found a better place. Got at least your leadership got him to a place to where he could function and keep going. But no, I know you say that jokingly because I know your personality, right? It's something that me and you find value in, is jacking with people. So I do appreciate that. So you kind of travel the world a little bit there, Austin, then Germany, then North Carolina, then after that, I mean, I know a bit about your history, but I think that you and your family ended up in Africa for a minute.
Well, we did. I was doing really well in the Air Force, and my dad had a little logging business at home, and Dad needed some help. And he said, can you come home and help me? And I said, well, I got 30 days leave saved up. Sure. He says, I think I'm going to need you a little longer than that. And so I had to make a choice between my dad and my career. And John, I loved what I did. Man, when you talk about the smell of jet fuel and hydraulic fuel and the sound of jet engines and jets taking off and the whole military existence, that was me to the T. I mean, I lived it. I breathed it. Wendy would tell you when I would come home at the end of the day, I smelled it. And, she learned to hate the smell of hydraulic fluid and jet fuel, and today I still love it. My office is down by Ellington Field right now, and when the wind's blowing right, I get that flight line smell, and, it's just incredible. But I made the decision saying, I can get another job. I can't get another dad. And so I left the Air Force and came home to help my dad in his business.
Okay.
And through that, realized that for Dad's health, he needed to get out of that business. And so that left me looking for that job that I said I could always get another one. And wound up working for a friend of mine and his dad. And through them, they introduced me to Jesus Christ. And I became a believer, a Christian, someone who wanted to serve Christ. And came to Houston serving in a local church down here. Met another pastor friend, and he says, God told me he wants you to go with me to Africa. I said, all right, you bumped your head going into your office. Sit down, and I'll be over there to check on you because you're hurt. Because I've not lost a thing in Africa. And so I went over and visited with him. His name was John Brady, and he said, no, it's really on my heart that you need to go. And I'm like, how much is it going to cost? And he says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. He said, I just really believe you need to go. And I'm like, wow. I get to go to Africa, and you're going to pay the bill. He said, yeah. And this is 1994. And so I go to Africa, and I'd seen the TV shows. I'm looking for this barren desert, and we land in the middle of the night, and they take us to a guest house, and I wake up in the morning to one of the most beautiful, lush places I'd ever seen in my life. I'm like, where'd we go? He said, this is Kenya. And I'm like, oh, cool. And so we did some evangelistic work, working through the local churches out there, and I really, really fell in love with the people. So much so that over the course of the next 2 years, I went 3 more times. And I came home from the 4th trip, and I told Wendy, I said, honey, I really, really think we're supposed to go to Kenya and serve the people. And she says, I already knew that was coming. And so Wendy and I and our 5 children packed up in January of 1996, and we boarded an airplane to Kenya. And in the Amsterdam airport, I met a guy from Houston, Texas, who was serving the people of Kenya, providing clean, safe water. And it was almost like my long-lost brother that I didn't know. I mean, we finished each other's sentences. He loved airplanes. He worked on airplanes. And he's the only person I ever met that would sit down and read an encyclopedia. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He says, I'm learning. And I'm like, okay, everything you ever wanted to know that you didn't think you wanted to know, he knows. And so incredibly talented. I'm an immensely smart guy. And so our time in Kenya was spent working with them and with the local church, providing clean water. And we came back here in 1998 and was working in a trucking company that we had started and still volunteering with Living Water and going back to Africa at least once a year. And then sold out the trucking company, moved over to work for Living Water full time, and served there for almost 8 years as their senior vice president. Helped them go from originally when I started working with them in Kenya, their annual budget was $250,000. When I left there, it was $25 million. We had gone from working in 2 countries to working in 23 countries, 16 of them in Africa. The last year I was there, we did 2,169 water projects in different communities across the continent. And so we had seen this phenomenal growth, and we estimate that we probably helped bring clean, safe water to about 13 million people. And so a donor wanted to start an organization that would focus on a singular area in Zimbabwe. And so he raised the money, and out of that came Global Water Partners, and for the next 9 years, we worked in that area, solving the water crisis in that part of Zimbabwe. And when we had finished, we turned the equipment over to the locals, and they're still working today.
There you go.
And so, great success. But once again, that left me looking for a job. And I met this guy named Jason Johnson. And he had a position open, and I was looking for something in the transportation industry for some reason, just because, I like trucks and they smell like fuel and oil and hydraulic fluid. And Jason and I hit it off, and I went to work at Forward Air. And another friend of mine who was a donor to Living Water let me back it just a minute. His wife had passed away, and she was an HPD officer. And so he wanted to start something that would honor her memory. And so Helping Heroes, the original edition, was founded to honor Laura Walls. And Bill was the main benefactor, her husband. And so we worked all across the country because he and I both loved to fish. And so I would fish at professional level tournaments, and everywhere we were, we would take veterans, first responders, out for a day on the water. We'd give them sometimes $1,000, $1,500 worth of gear, so that when we left, they'd continue to have something to take their mind off of the stresses that they dealt with every day. And we're like, this is really valuable. Mm-hmm. And so we worked with people from Florida to New York, all the way over up in Missouri and Mississippi and Alabama, and just have a tremendous network of people that we have worked with and helped. And then I was on my way home from Lake Champlain in New York, and I had gone through Alabama and visited with Bill. And I knew that Bill was struggling with some issues. He had since remarried, and that was not going that well. And he and his wife divorced. And I got a call from his son about 3-4 days later saying that Bill had taken his life. And so as I began to do as we all do, look back over, how did that happen? The first thing is, what could I have done? Well, the reality is, I couldn't have done a thing. Bill was in a place where Bill made a choice. And Bill made a choice, in my mind, because he thought he had no other options. When people get to the place where they have no hope, where they believe they're out of options, suicide is a very, very normal response. And that's tragic. A couple of years later, my own grandson got to that same place. And we lost him to suicide. And so as a way to reach out to people where they are. Not where I want them to be, but where they are. We founded Helping Heroes Outdoors. Helping Heroes 2.0, if you will. Mm-hmm. To love on people. Take them out. And John, I like starting the day while it's still dark. And so I've got these people, and I've taken them out on the water, and the only thing they know is I'm in the middle of the water and it's dark. Mm-hmm. But then the sun starts to come up. And I share with them, look, as dark as it was a few minutes ago, when that sun comes up, the light is here. And I want you to know, no matter how dark you're in right now, how dark that darkness is, the sun will come up tomorrow. And there's people like me who care. And I think one of the things that I personally struggle with today is there are so many veteran service organizations out there. Every one of us has a good story, but there's so little collaboration. You know, and sometimes, and we're probably all guilty of, well, this has to be done my way. Mm-hmm. Well, really and truly, the only thing that has to be done my way is nothing. If I'm truly here to serve, that's all that matters. And I think, from my personal experience, a lot of the people, guys and gals, that are in need really are overwhelmed with the people willing to help. And they're facing several issues. Number one is, who do I trust to tell my story to? Because if I tell the wrong person, they may let my boss know, and I may lose my job. I may lose my ability to take care of my family. So who can I trust? And then when I trust this person, are they really going to help me? Or am I just another checkbox? You know, we served 7 people this week. Or are they really offering what I need? There's so much noise out there that sometimes they're overwhelmed. And it actually becomes a burden to them to try to find the help.
Yeah, I was talking to another young man. He's got a foundation, and they are dealing with combating veteran homelessness. Mm-hmm. So he was talking about, there's homelessness, and he's kind of the same place you are. He wants to serve, right? And it doesn't need to be specific to veteran, but being a veteran like he is, he knows they have a different need. Mm-hmm. A veteran does than someone else who might be homeless because of the PTSD type scenario, right? They're not only combating what they, their problem, whether they can't find a job or the normal things that create those adverse situations, but they're also combating something that needs some medical support, right? Mm-hmm. That needs the psychological support, and it's pretty neat to make sure that when you think about adversity and all of it, you're kind of bringing it all together because every organization is trying to do it their way. And I agree with you that there needs to be more collaboration and there needs to be more talking amongst the groups because there's a lot of good people trying to do good things. Mm-hmm. And they step on their own toes or step on their other feet or put one leg in front of their buddy. Or it's always like, okay, you guys work together because, just like I do, every time I find one of these, I introduce them to Bruce and I'm like, hey, and sometimes the service they're wanting to do for someone they might need themselves also, right? Because what I've learned, and I've interviewed, I don't know, 6 or 7 veterans over the last few days. And one thing I figured out is y'all have, I'm not a veteran, but y'all have a community amongst yourselves, and it's closed. I mean, and that's okay to people like me. We love that you have a closed community. From afar, I like to support it in every way I can, to showcase it in this scenario, all those things. But I love the fact that you guys have that, but you also know how to speak your own language, a language that an outsider didn't get, right? And the one thing I fell in love with about your nonprofit, Helping Heroes Outdoors, is you've got a guy and you know how to speak the language, right? And I don't mean to sound, you take a veteran who may be struggling with some thoughts, and you take them out of the water and they can't escape.
That's right.
Well, they can swim.
Unless his name's Jesus, he's got nowhere to go. Because I'm going to be far enough out on the lake that he's not going to swim that far back.
Yeah. And so you take them out there, and that they're forced to listen, but I mean, you do it in a way that's not forced, right? I mean, you're a charismatic person, so it doesn't have to be a forced thing. But you do take them out, and better yet, you teach them how to potentially cope with this scenario in the future. Because a lot of those guys do want to be in their own thoughts, right? They do need to know that someone like you or other veterans or the veteran community is here to support you. But they also are going to have times where they're by themselves, right? And they need to know how to deal with what's going in their own mind. And fishing is a great solution for a lot of guys. And if they learn how to do it correct and they enjoy doing it and something they can do with their loved ones, their children, their daughters, uncles, dads, everybody, they can involve people in teaching them a better way to have that hobby. I think it's just like I've told you, I've never been a fisherman, right? It's not my thing. But will I go out and sit on a boat with you and float around? You said, as long as you're quiet, you will. What was your thing? Well, you had a phrase for that.
So John, it's kind of like this.
Yeah.
Not everybody enjoys. Some people are terrified to be on the water. And so fishing is not necessarily a good solution for everyone. And I think our approach is, if you think you'll enjoy it, then yeah, we'll take you out. If you're terrified, we'll try to help you get over the fear. But there are some people who only want somebody to listen to them who speaks the language. Yeah. They don't need an activity, they need an ear. I took a young man out not long ago, and we're sitting there and I'm waiting on the sun to come up, and he says, I know what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, it's called getting tackle ready to fish. He says, no, I know what you're doing. And I'm like, Rich, what do you mean you know what I'm doing? He says, you got me out here on the lake. You want me to open up. You want me to share my whole story. You want me to tell you all about my life. I said, no, not really. I would prefer you just shut up and let me finish tying these knots. And he's like, you're not fooling me. I know what you're doing. And so the sun comes up, and I'm like, man, what a beautiful brand new day. And he says, here we go. And I'm like, what do you mean? Dude, the sun just came up. We have another day to live. And he says, I've already told you I know what you're up to. And I'm like, dude, just shut up and fish. Yeah. And so, we catch a few fish, and he says, I got some trouble. I said, no, I don't. Tell me about it. And he says, see there, I knew. I'm like, then don't tell me about it. And I go back to fishing. Well, about 15 minutes later, he starts opening up.
He finally got past that.
He finally,
that barrier.
We got to the trust part.
Yeah, exactly.
And the rest of the day, we worked through a lot of his issues. And on the way home, we were up on Sam Rayburn, so, we got a couple-hour ride back home. And about halfway home, he slams his hand down and says, I told you I knew what you were doing. I said, now, wait a minute. I said, did I make you share one thing with me? He said, no. I said, you shared because you felt a need. He says, yeah. That's where we need to get, where we let them tell us. Because a lot of programs, a lot of good-meaning programs, they've already decided, you're a vet, you've got PTSD, you may hurt somebody or somebody around you. And so this is the program we're going to put you in. You're going to do A, B, C, and D, and you're going to come out okay, and it becomes like a factory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rich has my phone number, and I answer every time he calls.
Yeah, it's there's a trust, but you also, every time maybe he's reminded, right, whenever someone, because it sounds like he's been through the program, let's say, right, whatever program it is, several times, and they have like you said, here's the recipe.
That's it.
We're going to go through the recipe of, we've had success with a lot of people, and thank God they're doing it. I mean, because they're having success, but not everyone fits that mold, and this is a different way to solve, an issue for someone that also, which I thought was cool, teaches them a life skill on a way to cope. Or a way to get those thoughts out of their head, And I think fishing for a lot of people is, for most older men, that's their way of getting out of their wife's house, right? And I'm not saying their house, I'm saying getting out of their wife's house whenever it becomes too much, right? And for years, men have done that, and this is just another avenue to utilize the same thing. And I always thought, but it does remind them, and I appreciate what Helping Heroes Outdoors does, and I think it's such a cool thing. And I know you're going for sponsorships and those kind of things. I know you've had organizations help you in the past, and you want to mention any of those that have gone through this?
Trey Kistler with Kistler Rods has been a phenomenal friend, first off.
Okay.
He's an Army veteran. He has his own rod building company, and he sponsors us, and he gives us a lot of the rods and reels that we give to guys that we take out on the water. He does it because he has a heart for what we do. And then when I look at Trey, I see, number one, he's been in Iraq. He's known the heat of battle. And Trey is the kind of person that would give you the shirt off his back. Literally, I'm wearing his hat right now. We have helped so many people because of his generosity. Strike King Lures, another company. Gamma Fishing. Fishing line's incredibly expensive. And
yes, sir.
Gamma Fishing is a little company out of Pennsylvania. Great fishing line company. And happens to be about an hour from where my wife grew up. And I went up there, and Dale Black is the owner, and visited with Dale, and he says, what are you spooling the reels that you're giving to these guys with? And I said, well, I'm putting the good fluoro on them. I want them to have the best. And he's like, man, that's expensive. And I'm like, it is, but they're worth it. And so normally I buy 1,000-yard spool at a greatly reduced price. And so he says, hang on just a minute. He comes and he hands me a big spool of line. And he says, when you run out, let me know, and I'll send you some more. When I opened the box, it was a 3,000-yard spool. And so,
It's going to take you a minute?
It's going to take a while. It really is. And so, those are just some of the great people. New World Wraps, John up in Conroe, wraps the trucks and the boats.
That guy is a perfectionist.
Phenomenal job. And he believes in what we do. Mercury. Mercury's been my outboard of choice. And they have powered this whole work, everything we do, and just been phenomenal. Minn Kota Trolling Motors. The tournament trails that I have fished, Minn Kota has a service crew there. There was one time that I pulled up on the dock, and I'm like, dude, my trolling motor just quit. There were 5 people in my boat before I could get the word quit completely out of my mouth, and there was a brand new trolling motor on my boat in 15 minutes and didn't cost me a dime. It's partners like that that help me do what I do to help others. Now, this little neck surgery thing that I went through, it's kind of shut me down for a while, but I am so ready to get back out and get back to doing what I believe is probably the third most valuable thing I do. The first most valuable thing I do is love God. The second most valuable thing I do is love my wife and my family. The third is love my country and the people that served it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so privileged to do what I do.
Yeah, so helping Heroes Outdoors, there's a couple of asks there, right? It sounds like, and one of them I'm going to put in for you. It is your ask, believe it or not, is if you know a veteran that needs some support, that maybe needs somebody to lean on, needs some quick talking, and needs somebody that understands that language, Bruce is someone you can reach out to pretty quick. And sometimes I introduce people to Bruce, and I'll call him personally and say, hey, I'm sending you a text with this guy included, but here's the reasons why. At least explore a conversation with him. Because sometimes you can see that people are struggling with the demons, right? They're struggling with certain things, and Bruce is a great resource to take those people and get them down a path, and at least be able to speak their language or get them some type of support. And Bruce is very easy to talk to. And then what's another ask for helping Heroes Outdoors, Bruce?
Oh, let's see. Our greatest expense, believe it or not, is gasoline.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs a lot of money, especially in this economy today, to run the equipment. And so if you know somebody that owns a gas company that would like to help us put gas in,
I just might have somebody.
You know, one of my friends who is a professional fisherman, I asked him the other day, I said, Kyle, how much do you spend a month on gas and oil for your boat? And he says, I really don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? He says, I got a sponsor that handed me a card and says, just every time you fill up, swipe this one. He said, I don't know. I said, well, would you try to find out for me? Because I want to see, where our expenses are versus somebody who's doing this almost every day. And so, in fact, he's up in Table Rock right now fishing the Toyota Championship. And that's another company that's been really good to me is Toyota. We fish the Toyota Owners Tournament every year. Last year, my wife won a brand new 4Runner from Toyota. Toyota gives back, and they help us. And it's partners like that make all the difference in the world.
All right, perfect. So I actually have a name of a company that's here local that's pretty close to the station, and I will. They will remain nameless until we get an agreement in place, but I'm almost certain that they will do something. Okay, well, perfect, Bruce. I think. How do we get in touch with Bruce Whitmire? How do we get in touch with Helping Heroes Outdoors?
The best way is brucewhitmire@gmail.com. I read every email and get hundreds a day. Or you can call my cell number at 713-376-2720. If I don't answer, please leave a voicemail because I will return the call.
So it's Bruce Whitmire at Gmail. Can you spell your last name?
Whitmire.
Yeah, because that could be spelled one of two ways. And then repeat that phone number one more quick.
713-376-2720.
Okay. Bruce, thank you for spending time with us, telling your story. I've always found it entertaining. I've heard it numerous times, and it's always fun for me to relay it to people because people are pretty shocked about what you've accomplished. Obviously, thank you for your service. I explained to you all the reasons why. That's not a hollow thank you. That is deep, heartfelt thank you to you and your family. Enjoy your Veterans Day.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I will see you around the corner. Appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you so much, John.
All right.
God bless.